This is BoomerLife on CIL 650.
I don't care too much for money. Money can buy me love. Can buy me love.
Welcome to Boomer Life on CIL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're speaking with JimDoyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group Financial Services. So the skill testing question is, are you where you want to be financially? A well thought out plan for your financial future is an integral part of building the life that you want for yourself and for your family. So Jim, just before we took a quick break, we were talking about issues surrounding gray divorce. And if you're just joining us now, we're talking about the additional challenges that those over 50 face when addressing financial issues around divorce. There are studies that find that weak planning can doom our golden years. And fortunately, we have JimDoyle here today to answer all of those tough investing and financial planning questions. So here it goes, Jim. One of the biggest lifestyle and financial questions that people going through divorce are likely to face. What is one of those?
I'd probably say, where are they going to live? Do they buy? Do they rent? It's not as easy as you might think, especially if you have kids and you don't want to interfere with their patterns.
With current real estate prices being off the chart, is it a wise decision to be tying up so much money in one asset in your home?
It depends. And I hedge on that because we've got different reasons for different families. One thing we sometimes see is people want things to stay just the way that they were before the divorce. They want to maintain the same lifestyle they had. But it might be helpful to note there's often only one income to support the new lifestyle. While working as a CDFA, I see many women who want to keep the family home, but sometimes that's not the best financial decision. Keeping the home involves property tax, house insurance, maybe strata fees, and then there's the upkeep of the home. That doesn't leave much room for extras.
Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to remind our listeners that a CDFA is a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, and Jim has a lot of experience in this department. So we've already established that this is a very emotional time, but it's also important to keep the future in mind once you're going through that divorce. So if you're not too certain what that future is going to look like, I suggest you consider calling somebody like Jim.
Thanks, Joanne. If most of your free cash flow is going into maintaining the home, and it's likely going to be a decade or more before the kids leave, your retirement finances could be a casualty of the whole process.
Well, real estate seems to be pretty fantastic right now. When people ask you for your opinion on this, what do you tell them?
I'm a little bit anxious. Personally, I feel valuations might be stretched. The growth has been unnaturally swift, and if history tells us anything, there's an increased possibility of a correction. Now, I don't know if this is going to happen or when it's going to happen, but if real estate values drop and you're counting on that money, the outcome is pretty unpleasant. Can you afford to be taking chances? If you can't afford to lose money, then you might want to rethink real estate.
There's a lot of change going on, that's for certain. And where the income or cash flow is coming from to meet these expenses can also be uncertain. So for families that are seeking stability, maybe the home is seen as a source of tranquility. For some, I can see why it can be a little bit overwhelming. Do you have any tips here, or what would you suggest?
If you're in your 50s, chances are you may have occasionally looked over your shoulder and thought about retirement, maybe a time or two.
Once or twice.
And that doesn't just apply to people going through divorce.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to admit that my retirement picture is probably not as clear as I'd like it to be at this stage in my life, but I think I'm like most people and feel I've got a little bit of time before I need to get really, get serious about this stuff. Am I on track, or?
Well, in order to get a little clarity on your dreams and start moving onto a path of action to get there, a simple way to start creating your retirement vision is to write down your goals.
We've heard you say before that most people spend more time planning their next 2-week vacation than planning their retirement, which would last them a lifetime. So where is a good place to start?
You might want to consider creating your retirement vision by starting with location and lifestyle.
So questions like, where do you want to be, or what do you want to be doing, and where do you want to be doing this? Now I seem to remember on one of our shows that you suggested that you can't golf 24/7, right?
There's probably a few people out there that like to argue that point, but you're right. Many families often have plans around what's going on in their kids' lives. And to be fair, many of the kids haven't figured it out yet, what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Don't place your life on hold.
Okay. When it comes to creating a sense of control over our futures, it sounds like dealing with the unknown is part of the problem, often deferring essential planning. But for some people, they're not even speaking to their spouse about what their vision of retirement actually looks like. So what can you offer couples who are getting a little bit of a late start on their retirement planning discussions?
For couples, I'd like to suggest plan for your own future, not just the family, with things that are important to you and your spouse. But remember, your plans need to be flexible. There are almost always a few things you can do to improve your financial situation. It's about choosing what choices you can live with and which are non-starters. If you're in your 50s and you haven't started saving for retirement or done that planning yet, you know what? You're not alone.
As you've been telling us for some time, Jim, financial habits are learned, both good and bad. With your help, I'm hoping that we can actually give out our listeners a few things that they can start doing right away to help improve their situation.
The financial considerations of your lifestyle and location are going to be wide-ranging.
What do you mean by that?
A simple question like, do I want to be in the same home I'm in, say, in 5 years? This can include mortgage term decisions to limit early payment penalties if you're carrying a mortgage. If any appliances break down, do I want the best new appliances, or will they stay with the home when I sell the home? This might help you decide how much you spend on replacing appliances as they need to be. If you're considering moving at some point in the future, will you be upsizing or downsizing? Writing your goals down gives you a sizable increase in the chances of your plans working out.
So just simply writing them down can actually be that powerful?
Yes, it can. A Dominican university study shows that you're 42% more likely to achieve your goals just by writing them down.
So what other ideas are the key takeaways of that study?
Write down when you want to retire, where you want to retire, and what you want to do. I can't say this often enough. The more detail, the better it can be for you.
So what do we do with these detailed written goals once we've got them down on paper?
Well, if you haven't done it already, create a written financial plan and update it each year. In its simplest form, the plan will show where you are and where you're going and what it will take to get you there.
And this is where one should consider engaging a financial planner like you?
Beautiful thought, Joanne. There's real benefits to outsourcing this activity. If you're doing it yourself, you want to make sure you have access to software that runs, say, Monte Carlo simulations so that you can run different variables. Simple spreadsheets just won't cut it.
So what is that, a Monte Carlo simulation?
You've heard of stress testing? Well, this is stress testing your financial plan to stress test everything from market volatility to cash flow to taxes to risk to estate planning, even down to inflation over time.
Wow, a lot of moving parts there. What's the first and most important part of that financial plan?
I'd have to say expenses and then cash flow.
So based on your experience as a financial planner, which you've been for, I think it's over 26 years now, why do you feel that expenses and cash flow are among the two most important?
Often, when I start working with someone, it's not uncommon for them to not have a good handle on what they're spending on a monthly basis. And they'll tell me, Jim, I've never bounced a check. I'm pretty good with money. Truth is, it's so much more than that.
I just don't think that has anything to do with money, but that's just me. When you take people through their average monthly expense exercise, what's one item that easily makes it onto the list of most retirees?
I'd have to say most people can easily tell me how much they spent on trips last year or what their spending plans are for this year. Where things start to get muddy is when we talk about these same expenses, say in 5 or 10 years, and we consider things like your health and your ability to travel and travel insurance and the effect of inflation over time and taxes, especially when we consider that getting the money to pay for your trips is probably going to have to come from somewhere.
We often hear of retirees using figures like 75% of pre-retirement expenses in their planning, or if you're within 10 years of retirement, you should do specific things like XYZ. Could you give us some specific examples of things that we can target here?
Joanne, I'd love to, but it's important to remember that recommendations here are for general information only and not to be intended as specific advice for any individual. For that, I really do recommend that you sit down with a planner. So give me a call. I'm at 604-682-5431. I'd love to help you.
So, Jim, we hear it all the time. To get a great handle on your expenses, you need to track them over a period of time. So recording ongoing expenses and discretionary expenses, you know, those money spending choices that aren't necessities. But I have to say, I really hate the idea of working in a budget.
Joanne, you're not alone. If I could, I think why so many people hate it is because budgets control us. They rule us. Instead, if we approach it as a money spending plan, how would you like to make your spending choices? I think that has a little less stigma.
And it has less negative connotations as well. I really like that, actually, a money spending plan. We're going to have to talk about that later.
This whole discussion leads to one not so comfortable discovery. You can't make an investment strategy work for you unless you know what you have coming in and what you have to work with. To build retirement savings, you need to spend less than you make, and then you need to keep some of what is left over for the long term.
Well, thanks, Jim. Starting over financially after divorce is a challenge that's faced by many Canadians, but at least it's nice to know that you're not alone. Help is available, and it's also especially helpful if you know you can talk to someone who can look at all of the financial aspects of your life, not just the investments. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Today, we're speaking with JimDoyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. And if you have a question you'd like to ask Jim about your situation, or maybe just get a second opinion on something, please, I invite you to call him, 604-682-5431. Or if it's easier, you can send him an email, jim.doyle@investorsgroup.com. Here's a good one. We all talk about how we would like to achieve more, but seem to be floundering. So the big question here is, why? Jim says he can help and offers insights into how what we think we know might be worthy of a fresh look. That's all next on Boomer Life on CL 650.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.